Forum Borealis Paradigm Expansion.
Greetings from the north and welcome to Forum Borealis. Today we shall follow the journey of the soul, looking into research on reincarnation, specifically children's memories of past life. This phenomenon is known all over the globe, but is naturally more tolerated in cultures where reincarnation is accepted. And so we find that scientists at all continents has been studying this continuously since the 1960s, and as we shall learn, for good reason. So, what have they found? Is there a design to this? Can any clear conclusions be drawn? Who better to discuss this with than the pioneer and veteran of the field, the 88-year-old Icelander Dr. Erlendur Haraldsson, who is Professor Emeritus of Psychology at the University of Iceland. His interest for the paranormal was triggered by an experience at the age of 15, described as a rebirth, where he became aware of an inner reality that was also mysteriously external and immensely greater than anything he ever experienced. Thereafter, he spent a lifetime within academia to study the paranormal, leading to about 100 papers in various peer-reviewed journals of psychology, psychiatry and parapsychology, and has contributed numerous chapters to books. From 1954 to 58, Dr. Haraldsson studied philosophy at the universities of Iceland, Edinburgh, Copenhagen and Freiburg. In addition to academic philosophers, he studied unorthodox and esoteric figures such as Martinus, Paul Brunton, P.D. Ouspensky, theosophical writers, and even Wendt's translations of Tibetan texts. He supported himself as a writer and journalist from 1959 to 63, and in 62, while studying at the Freie Universität in Berlin, the Berlin Wall was erected, and he reported first-hand news on the friction between the superpowers, gained access to the Berliner Pressekonferenz, where he listened to Willy Brandt, the mayor of West Berlin and later Germany's chancellor, and also attended press conferences of famous directors and film stars at the Berlin Film Festival. He studied psychology at the universities of Freiburg and Munich, where he obtained his degree in 1969. He was research fellow at the Institute of Parapsychology in Durham, North Carolina, between 1969 and 70, where he spent a year with famous parapsychologist Dr. G.B. Rhine of Duke University. There, he conducted experiments on physiological measurements of ESP for his doctoral thesis, and experiments using the famous random number generator, obtaining significant results. He did internship in clinical psychology at the Department of Psychiatry at the University of Virginia between 1970 and 71. In 72, he received his PhD from the University of Freiburg, where his doctoral advisor was famous parapsychologist Dr. Hans Bender. From 72 to 74, he worked as a research associate at the American Society for Psychical Research. In 1973, he became faculty member at the University of Iceland, where he advanced to full professor in 1989, and has been visiting professor in the US and Germany. He retired from teaching in 1999. Dr. Haraldsson has conducted surveys of religious and folk beliefs, for example, of randomly selected Icelanders conducted between 1974 and 1975, where he established that an unusually high proportion believed in the paranormal. In a 1978 survey, he examined the prevalence of belief in precognitive dreams. And in a study published in 1985, he found proportionally more reports of encounters with dead people from Iceland than any other European country. Moreover, in 1982, he started to work with a pioneer, Dr. Ian Stevenson at the University of Virginia, leading to a lifelong association and several publications of joint papers, such as on the mediumship of Icelander Halfstein Björnsson and studies of the children with memories of previous lives, comparing them with paired children who did not have such memories. He has authored 8 books throughout his life. When as a journalist traveling widely through the Middle East and writing extensively on it, it culminated in a book on the plight of the Kurds in Iraq. Another book he did on surveys and investigations into apparitions, and another on deathbed visions phenomena in the US and India, with studies of 10,000 cases. Other books has been about his investigative study of afterlife encounters, as well as the Icelandic medium Indridi Indridason. He achieved notoriety for his pioneer investigation into the Indian guru Satya Sai Baba and his alleged paranormal abilities, of which he has written 2, described by the philosopher of religion Dr. David Lane as approaching the alleged miracles of Sai Baba with a critical but open outlook, and recommended as the most balanced book ever written on the subject. Albeit Sai Baba refused to submit to testing in a controlled environment, Haraldsson interviewed a great number of witnesses and followed him around as a witness himself. And though they did not reach any definite conclusion, he managed to falsify some of the alleged miracles, but regarded fraud as unlikely, as they could not detect any evidence for this, and were led to regard Sai Baba's materializations as possibly paranormal. In 2012, he published a memoir. Since his retirement, Dr. Haraldsson has continued to conduct research and publish articles, and is still an active writer and international lecturer, and a frequent speaker at professionals' gatherings such as the convention of the American Psychological Association. In 2007, he brought about the establishment of an endowment at the University of Iceland to support research into paranormal phenomena and psychic experience. He's also contributed to the cross-cultural standardization of psychological testing instruments. Erlendur was made chairman of the promotion committee for the Faculty of Social Science and a member of the university's grant-giving research fund commission, and has received major awards such as the Myers Memorial Award from the Society for Psychical Research and an Outstanding Career Award from the Parapsychological Associations. Several documentaries have been made about his work, shown on BBC, Channel 4, Storyhouse Productions, Discovery Channel and many other TV stations in Europe, Asia and the US. His 30 years research into reincarnation has recently been published as the book called I Saw a Light and Came Here, which is the basis for today's conversation. Welcome to the show, Erlend.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to be with you.
And we're very happy to have you, the emeritus of reincarnation research. Today, I was thinking we could discuss reincarnation and scientific research into reincarnation.
Yeah.
And discuss your new book and also your other books on the same subject.
Yes, that's fine.
So people have already heard the introduction about you at this point.
Okay.
But nevertheless, I want us to start with you telling us how come you started to investigate the field of reincarnation. Why were you drawn to that?
Well, I think the primary reason was that I spent some time at the University of Virginia. I did an internship in clinical psychology. And there was Professor Ian Stevenson in the Department of Psychiatry. and I came to know him. And he had already at that time spent a long time studying cases of children who claimed to remember a past life. Then at a later date, he asked me if I would like to investigate some cases. And yes, I agreed to that if I could investigate many enough to make a psychological study of them, namely compare them with children who claim no memories of a past life. And he agreed to that.
Mm. So you cooperated with Dr. Stevenson?
Yes, yes, I cooperated with him, and we wrote a few joint papers, not only on reincarnation studies, but also on other matters as well.
Yeah, you have been delving thoroughly into everything that has to do with death. I mean, some of the titles of your books is At the Hour of Death,
Yes.
where with an introduction of Dr. Kubler-Ross.
Yes, that was a study that I did with Carlos Osis of the American Society for Psychical Research. It was a study of visionary experiences or hallucinations, if you like, just before people die. And he had made a pilot study, and he was very interested in this area. And then we made a major study. We interviewed some, I think about 400 doctors and nurses in India, and about the same, in the United States, and about the same number in India, who had noticed that their patients had some visionary experiences just before they died. These visionary experiences were generally of the kind that some deceased relatives or friends or perhaps spouses appeared to them and indicated to them or told them that they had appeared to guide them to the world of the departed.
So some kind of near-death experience.
Yes, it was, of course, experiences near the time of death. But otherwise than maybe we can say classical near-death experiences, these were near-death experiences where the people died immediately or very quickly after the experience, whereas in the better known near-death experiences, the person has, well, I will not go into what a near-death experience is, but has an experience and then remembers it and is alive. It is not. It's not followed by death.
Well, what are these called in the field? Premonitions, death premonitions? Is there a word for this?
Well, I think that these visionary experiences, well, maybe they were death premonitions, or maybe we have to assume that those who have passed away, that they are still living, they make themselves aware to the dying person.
Right. And then you have a book called The Departed Among the Living, an investigative study of afterlife encounters.
Yes. I had noticed in international surveys that a large part of the population feels or thinks that they have had some contact with the dead. It may be from 20 to 40%. And so it's a common experience. A large part of the population has an experience of someone that has died. But these are only surveys, and they only give figures.
Right.
So I wanted to interview a large number of people and ask them what was the nature of their experience. What was it, a visionary experience, Did they hear someone? Was it just a feeling of presence, or perhaps even of smell that they associated with a deceased person, and so on. So I and my students, we interviewed, I think it was about 400 cases where people claimed they had had an experience of someone who had died. And then we made various kinds of analysis, how many were visionary, how many auditory, and so on and so forth. It was a very interesting study. One thing that I remember was that it was interesting of those who appeared to the living, how many had suffered a violent death. Sometimes, that was particularly, and then that would be strangers who would appear to the living. That's all described in detail in my book, The Departed Among the Living.
So it's kind of related to At the Hour of Death.
Yes, it is related, but the people who experienced it, they didn't die.
No.
They were usually in a normal condition, and yes, and it was not sort of a deathbed situation that they were in.
So you have talked with people, or you have investigated people who died but had a vision or premonition before they died. You have talked with people who have had an experience with the dead. Yes. Why haven't you written a book about classical near-death experiences? Have you not investigated that?
Sorry, what do you mean now?
Classical near-death experience, like being dead and then being brought back.
Well, there have been so many people who have been working in that area. So
good point.
I leave it to them.
You leave it to them, okay.
Yes, and I leave it to them. Well, when Carlos Osis and I did our study of deathbed visions, we came close to these near-death experiences. But we didn't get much response to our questions relating to this. Of course, we were talking to doctors and nurses who were reporting to us experiences near the time of death. So it was a different situation. But there have been done many very fine studies about near-death experiences in the classical sense, like Bruce Grayson, Pim van Lommel, and more. And of course, what was the name of that American who started it? It escapes me at the moment.
Raymond Moody?
Yes, Moody.
Yeah, all these people have been interviewed by Skeptical.
Yes.
So it's pretty covered. But it's interesting that you have sought out related areas there where there have not been so many studies. And I think we can say the same about your new book.
Yes, I wrote a book on reincarnation about my studies of children who remember past lives, or remember episodes from past lives, yes.
Which is called I Saw Light and Came Here.
Yes. Children's
Experiences of Reincarnation. That you wrote together with Dr. Matlock.
Well, we can say, I really wrote it first alone. And then he wanted to join, so he wrote a second part to the book. I wrote about my experiences, my investigations of cases in Sri Lanka and in Lebanon and some in India and Iceland. And that was just that I did alone.
Right.
And then I had written some papers about it, and then I was about to write a book about it. But then he wanted to join me. And he is a very learned man. He knows all the studies very well, better than I do. I have been more researching, he has been reading.
I see.
So
perfect mix.
So we agreed that I would, yes, we agreed that he would write a second part to the book.
Right.
And yes.
So your part would be, for example, all the stories from the children's, the fun part.
Yes. My part would be dealing exclusively with my observation, the investigation I did of cases, whereas he reported cases in the literature that he had studied the papers, and he wrote a fine part. But these two parts are quite.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he wrote that. And that is certainly a valuable addition to the book. And he, for example, he writes about cases from tribal society and cases from India and Brazil that others have investigated, and about cultural patterns and beliefs, and so on and so forth. So it was good to have him.
Yeah. I shall ask you more questions about the book and some of the stories, but I just want to make an observation. You said that you focused on speaking with children in Iceland, Lebanon, Sri Lanka, and India.
I focused on children. Well, mostly I studied cases in Sri Lanka and Lebanon.
So Lebanon, that would be Druze people, right?
Yes. Well, I told Stevenson when we agreed I would make a study, then it would be best to do it in one country. So you come to know the country, the culture, you develop contacts and ways to find the cases. And I liked Sri Lanka. I had I'd been there twice before. So we agreed that I would do it there. And it is not so difficult to find cases in Sri Lanka.
No, but did you speak with Hindu or Buddhist children? Or both?
The Sri Lankas are primarily Buddhist. There are not many Hindus.
What about the Tamil?
Pardon me?
The Tamil people.
Yes, the Tamil people, they are Hindus.
Yeah, they live in Sri Lanka. You didn't speak with them?
Yeah, in the north of Sri Lanka. But at the time when I did my study, there was a bit of a civil war with the Tamil.
Oh, yeah.
And I never went to the north.
Right.
And I think I have no Tamil cases in my, or not that I can recall at the moment.
But with the children in India, did you speak with Hindu children there?
Well, I didn't study much cases in India. When I was in India for other purposes, I would sometimes make inquiries about a certain aspect of a case. For Ian Stevenson, of a case that he had investigated, but not fully. So I made some interviews for him. But
right.
But my emphasis was on cases in Sri Lanka. And then I wanted also to make a study of cases where there is a very different culture that are not Hindus, not Buddhists. So we agreed, or I decided to do one in Lebanon among the Druze.
Yeah, the Druze.
A religion that is, well, it is sort of they have their own religion, but it is more related to Islam than it is to Buddhism or Hinduism.
Yes, but for the listeners who maybe don't know about the Druze religion, I want to point out that they too accept reincarnation, as so many religions actually do.
Yeah.
So that was very clever, and also Iceland is famous for having many open-minded spiritual people. You're very close to the earth, the ancestors, the traditions. So if you were going to speak with children in the Western world, I think actually Iceland would be the best place to...
Yeah, but of course Iceland has a very small population.
Yeah.
these cases are very rare.
Yeah.
One thing I would like to add, that in Sri Lanka, we have the Buddhists, we have the Tamils, we have the Christians, we have the Muslims in different proportions. Most of them are Buddhists, but there are others. And in my study, I found cases among all the religious communities.
So not just Buddhists, but even...
They were primarily of the Buddhist community, but there were also some of Muslim and Christian.
Interesting.
Yes.
But those children, the parents of the children who were not Buddhist or Hindu, were they open to this, or were they trying to stop the memories?
You mean the parents?
The parents and the neighbors and the family.
Yes. Well, it differed. Sometimes the parents, also among the Buddhists, they would try to suppress what the child was talking.
Yeah.
But many of those children are very persistent about these memories. They talk about them again and again, and even become a bit of a plague for the family. They always want to talk about this memory.
But you know the skeptics.
Yes.
They claim that the children are being told what to say, or that their fantasy, and that they become famous and they come in the newspapers, like they have an incentive to...
I think that the skeptics, they have one disadvantage. They haven't studied any case themselves.
Good point.
Some may be fantasies, but please repeat what you said.
Well, I was just saying that the skeptics claim that the children are coerced, or that they do it because they become famous.
No, I think that they are coerced. That is only at best in rare cases. Because generally the parent, they tend to push down, suppress what the child is telling about the past life.
And do they become famous? Do they come in the newspapers, every child who say that?
Well, in Sri Lanka, when a correspondent learns about, some newspaper learns about a case, he may go and interview the child and the parents, perhaps. So there will come a short obstacle in the newspaper, but I don't think they will be. They are not becoming famous. But some receive some notoriety.
But you must have some kind of methodology, a way for you to distinguish which cases you choose to accept. So what is your filter? What is your method to collect these cases? Do you take anything that you are told?
Well, let me first explain that I would always interview a child more than once, maybe half a year apart, and see if there is some consistency in what they have been saying.
Right.
Then I will not only interview the child, I will interview the mother, maybe grandparents, maybe playmates. So I will try to come to know what the child has been saying from as many witnesses as possible and over some period of time. I will not take as a case something that is only said once or briefly. It must have some consistency. The case must last over some period of time. There must be several witnesses to the child's statements and so on.
So what would you say is the most... Can you give one story that you think is very convincing, or very that made a very strong impression on you?
Well, I think there was the case of Purnima Ekanayaka. It was a girl in Sri Lanka, and she remembered that she had been on a bicycle and been killed by a lorry or some vehicle. And she stated that she had been an incense maker. She has been making incense and made several different statements. It is listed in my book. And, then, as I stated, also the area where she had been living. She once went with her school to a temple, famous temple in India, the Kiliniya temple. Mm. And after that, she told her parents that she had lived on the other side of the Kiliniya river, that river passes the Kiliniya temple. Mm. And then a little later, a new teacher came to the school where her father was the principal. He was the master of the school. Mm. And he happened to be from that area of Kiliniya. And he learned about the girl's statements. So he decided to go to the other side of the river and investigate if there were any incense maker and if any of them had passed away not too long ago. Mm. Well, incense making is a very small profession. Yeah. So she found there had indeed been an incense maker on the other side of the river. And there were two of them working together, making incense. And one of them, he had been killed when he was bringing the incense to the market. He was run over by some big vehicle. So that was confirmed. Then also the child had been saying they were making Gita pizza, and what was the name of the other? She came up with two names of the brands they were making. These were just names particular for them. Mm. And yes, and these two incense makers, one of whom had died, they had indeed been making these incenses, had given their incense those names.
And the child couldn't have learned about this from other sources?
Well, that is hard to say, but it seems unlikely that she had come to know it from the other sources, because the girl lived in central Sri Lanka, but the Kiliniya temple is rather near to Colombo. That's on the coast and further south. So that is unlikely.
And the death she described was the same as this incense maker had died?
Well, she didn't describe it in detail, but he had died in an auto accident, or a car accident.
Right. So here we have an example of a man who came back as a female.
Yes. Yeah.
That's interesting.
That is a rather unusual thing, but...
So usually when they remember their former life, it's the same gender?
Yes, usually they have the same gender.
That's interesting.
But a certain percentage, though, has changed sex. Yeah. Yeah, Purnima made the statement, I died in a traffic accident and came here. My family was making incense and had no other job. We were making Ambika incense. We were making Gita pizza incense. The incense factory was near a big factory and near a pond. We verified that.
Oh, okay. So in your book, we will find many personal stories that you have recorded from these children, right?
Yes, the book is full of stories that I have.
Oh, that's excellent. That's the fun part.
I mean, I only write about cases that I have myself studied.
Yeah.
Jim Matlock, he writes on cases that others may have been investigated, like Hernani Andrade in Brazil and Ian Stevenson in the US.
Right. But are you able to extract any patterns among all these studies? For example, can you find that there is a certain time before people are reincarnated, or does that just seem random, or any pattern at all to anything?
Yes, there's one particular pattern that is very clear, and that is that these children, when you look at the past of the person, if you can identify it, that is that they have died violently. They have died in accidents or in some other way.
So maybe if you remember as a child your former life, it's because the death was traumatic, so it kind of shocked them.
Yes.
And it infested in the memory somehow.
Yes. It also seems that these I want to say here, that well, sorry, now I lost my thoughts.
Yeah, we were talking about patterns and...
Yes, the patterns.
Yeah.
Well, there's a pattern of that they died violently.
Right.
And then there is a common with them that they will say to their parents, "This is not my home." They say to their mother, "You are not my mother. I have a real mother somewhere else."
Mm.
And the child will want to find that mother. And so they tell about violent death. And then quite a few of them have phobias and fears. They are related to their memories and related to how they died. So they have phobias and fears. And then I also made some psychological tests with them. And I found that they tended to be gifted children. They had a greater vocabulary at an earlier age than their peers. But then also, so they were on one side more gifted, but then they had some symptoms of a post-traumatic stress disorder. And that is a disorder that people have if they've been through very stressful experiences. And of course, the stressful experiences in their case is the memory of how they died. And they will not only remember that they were in an auto accident, they will maybe remember the details of it. And they will often think about it, and that may cause the post-traumatic stress disorder. And then they also, some of them, they have birthmarks or physiological features that are related to, like to the wounds they had when they died. So they may have a birthmark or, I don't know what you call it, at the place where they had the wound that brought them to death.
I see. What about scars or...
Yes, they may have scars. That's just it. They may have some scars that are found on their body and which could be sometimes verified by getting to the post-mortem report that was done in the case, because often these are cases of accidents. There are some legal proceeding afterwards. And in the file of them, you will see that there is a post-mortem report. And I studied some and found them that that the wound the child had suffered, that is can be seen as a scar on their body.
But has any case where they remember the life between the life? I mean, the transition period, or even their birth?
Yes, there are a few cases.
Wow.
Where people have some memories of their life in between. Like in the case of Purnima Ekanayaka, she died, and then she was hovering in a sort of semi-dark world for a while, and she could observe her grieving family, and then she stated that she saw a light and came here, namely she came to her parents.
Mm.
So the title of my book, I Saw a Light and Came Here, that is taken from one such case.
Right.
But these cases are not many. They are, but still they are a few. And there is a Japanese investigator. He has tried to find such cases in Japan and has found a fair number of them.
Interesting. But is there any pattern about the time? Like, how long time does it take from you die till you become reincarnated?
Well, in these cases, the time interval is quite variable. But now I figured out the mean, and that is somewhere between 1 and 2 years. On the shortened case, there was just 1 week, if that was a true case, you know.
Wow. Yeah.
If we had identified the previous personality correctly. Yes. So this is a relatively short period between death and rebirth.
Maybe that is a contribution to why they remember it, because all these people have been reincarnated very quick after their death.
Yes. I sometimes thought of these cases we get as cases of quick return. These are cases of persons who die, mostly violently, and then are reborn. But when you die violently, it means you are thrown out of your life. It's not a natural end to a life. It is something very disruptive. And yes, and maybe for that reason they will come back rather quickly.
Yes, and maybe that is the reason why a common denominator is that they remember the death.
Yes.
Because that's not necessarily what people will remember. Like if you have spiritual people who say they can remember their life, or fragments of a former life, maybe not always death is a part of that.
No.
It's more like strong impressions from a former life. Like everybody remembers to have been Cleopatra and Napoleon, to put a cliche.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't remember their death. You would just remember the highlight.
Yeah. But these children, they tend to remember the death.
Yeah.
And their death and the events leading to their death.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, the events. Did many of them have a need to fix or to go back and do something about the former life, connect with people or find the killer or something like that?
I do not remember such a case. But
you know, when we talk about ghosts, very often it's unfinished business. They need something to be completed before they can move on.
Right.
I was just wondering if it's the same kind of need, desire.
Well, I am not very clever about how to do that.
Okay.
So I'm with a question I'm not really able to answer. But I think I remember. Well,
I mean, don't they have a desire to meet their real parents, as they call them?
yes, they often want to find their previous parents, their previous home, and as I told you a while ago, they tend not to accept the present home and family.
Right.
and think that their real family lives somewhere else, and their real parents are not their present parents. So they identified with their past life memories.
Yeah. Were there any case where a child could meet the former family or loved ones, and how did such a meeting go? Was the child accepted? Was there a sort of redemption, a satisfaction?
The children, they would often like to say that they want to go to the previous home, their previous family, and so on. Mm-hmm. In some instances, when the case was solved, the families met, but then the children never settled with the previous family. They stayed with their old family.
The new family, you mean?
Yes, they stayed with their new present family.
Yeah.
But didn't go over to the old one. But sometimes there were connections and friendship established between the two families, or between the child and the previous family that lasted a long time.
Right. That's nice. But when do the children seem to forget the memory? What is the age of all these children? Is there some pattern here?
Well, it differs. I made one study of this, and they usually tend to. They usually start to forget. So when they are 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, and some forget everything, but some have, quite a number, have memories that continue to be with them. But I made a study of this, and I found that children who have memories, and when you ask them about these memories when they are much older, then you find that they will only have kept about 10% of their original memories. I did this. I looked at the cases of Stevenson, cases that he had studied in the 50s and 60s. And then I met these people when they were grown up in the 90s, perhaps, and asked them about their previous memories. And they would only recall about around 10%. So much of these memories are gone, and some do not remember anything at all.
Interesting. So it seems that the first 7 years is when we are most open to this.
Yes.
But not all of them die as children, right?
Yes.
Many of them were adults.
No, they don't die necessarily as children. No. They die at the various ages, and I have somewhere in the book the sort of mean age for, I think, mean age at which these people died, whom their children seem to be talking about. And usually they are, many of them are young, tend to be young, but there are also some elderly people. And I remember like one, it was a monk, I think. He claimed to have had pain in his chest. He fell to the floor and he died. We were able to identify that monk, and he had been sort of in his older days.
Yeah, but the children you talk with, are they always... did you always find their origin, or were there many where you never find?
Oh, there were quite many who we never found any. We're not able to verify in any way.
Right.
And there were some who made statements that we could verify they were either right or wrong, and there were a number of cases. that were of that kind. So so there's quite a number of cases that cannot be true. They are either fantasies or they are a mixture of true memories and some fantasies that the child has had.
Developed through,
Developed, yes.
Yeah, it's probably hard to keep that pure. I mean, we have false memories even from this life, the same life. We can have, fantasies attached to the memory. So it's hard. But what about the location? Are they always in the same country?
Most of the time they are in the same country. Often they are not far from each other. And there are, in fact, very few cases where the person is remembering a life that seems to have taken place in a different country. I remember about my Sri Lankan cases. I think they were almost all of them taking place in Sri Lanka. I have a memory about one case of someone who remembered having been killed in a traffic accident. But, we suspected that that man had been working somewhere in the Middle East, which is common in Sri Lanka. People go there and work in the Arab world.
Right. And then reincarnated back in Sri Lanka.
Yes, but then they reincarnate again in Sri Lanka. But honestly, I have to read my book again.
Yeah, there's many. How many cases do you think you have explored, or all in all? 500?
No. I investigated some. I think it was 64 cases in Sri Lanka, and saying I investigated, I tried to study them as far as possible.
Yeah.
I took each case as a legal case and investigated it, looked at the strengths and weaknesses, found witnesses, and so on and so forth. And then in Lebanon, I had somewhat over 30 cases. My purpose in Lebanon was primarily to find cases enough so I could make a psychological study. And usually 30 cases is sufficient for that. Yeah, so these are 90. Then I had, there was one case in Iceland. Then I had, I think I had a hand in one case in India. So... yeah.
But these are the cases you explore, but there must be many cases that you do not. There must be much more cases around than what you have explored.
Yes, of course. No, I would include in these numbers also cases that had a dead end. I studied a great number of these cases. I meet quite a number of people, but
okay.
Just a moment. Please say this again. What do you say?
Yeah, so of all the cases, how many would you say had a dead end, and how many did check out? 50-50?
Well, there was a number of them who had a dead end. Well, I wouldn't dare to say any number, but maybe it was a third or more.
So, okay, that's interesting. What would you say is the strangest case you ever have seen? Weirdest case?
Well, there was a case of a young boy, Tuminta Ratnayake. He was brought up in the country, not far from country, the main town in the center of the country, and he claimed to have been a monk in the Askariya temple, a senior monk. And And he made many statements about his life. Also, that some that didn't fit the life of a monk, like that he had money, and that he had a car, and so on,
Okay.
which people didn't believe. But then it was found out that in Askeria, the chief monk, we may study this case very thoroughly.
Yeah.
He claimed to have been a chief monk, Mahanayaka, I think it was called.
Uh-huh.
And they, in fact, are in charge of the money of the monastery.
Right.
They have a lot of money.
Yeah.
And in this case, which is not common, the chief monk, he also had a car. And the boy was talking about that he had a red car. And it was true. This previously, or perhaps also at that time, the Mahanayakas, the chief monks, they had a car. And the one we are now referring to, he had a red car.
Uh-huh.
We studied this case, I studied this case very carefully, and it was published before my book was published. And it is, yes, you find all the details in the book.
Yeah.
And this boy, he also wanted to become monk again. Very, very keen to become a monk, and told their family he wanted to become a monk, he wanted to become a monk, he wanted to become a monk. Well, in the end, they gave up. He joined his old monastery. And there he was for several years, and he was quite well accepted and popular with the leaders of the monastery.
Yeah, did they accept him as the former master?
I think I tend to believe so. I do not remember. Yes, I think they did. And then he was brought up as a monk. But then when he became of age, so around 20 or before that, he became very interested in computers. And he became very clever with them.
Right.
So he started to work with a security company to set up cameras and so on and so forth for businesses and companies and so on. So he did that, and then he decided he wanted to leave the monkhood. He wanted to disrobe, and he did that. And then he went to the University of Colombo and studied computer science and completed that.
Wow.
He is in charge of computer matters for a certain part of for a major institution, major governmental institution in Sri Lanka. Yes, and not only that, then later he met a girl and they married and they had a child. And he is, by the way, one or two persons with whom I have kept in contact after these many years.
Yeah.
The other person is Purnima Ekanayaka, who remembered being an incense maker.
Yeah, the one you told us about.
Yes, that I told you about.
That story about the monk really took a strange twist. It did. But your son, when I spoke with Harald, he told me about a case about a monk where the child said the secret password that only the monk could know. And when you talked with the monastery, it was verified.
Yeah.
So that is a pretty interesting, when they are privy to special knowledge.
Yeah.
And when you investigate this and you verify this knowledge, it is a very strong indication that.
Yeah, but I had also one case that had nothing to do with monks.
Yeah.
But there was a boy who claimed to have been a miner.
Miner.
But mines in Sri Lanka usually just pits in the ground and they get filled with water. maybe they are like 3-4 meters at the most. And yes, and there they will take up the soil, put it on a basket, and it is taken up. They are trying to find precious stones. And then they have this kind of basket, and then they move it in a certain way, shake it in a certain way. And this boy, he claimed to have been doing this, so we brought him to a miner and to some mines, and let him do it. And the miners told he did it exactly right. So, well, that was it.
Ah, so he too verified the special skill, the special knowledge.
Yes, he verified how they did it. And they also said he spoke. He used the right words for the work of the miners.
This is interesting. Of course, we cannot know for sure if maybe, I mean, what if these children just have very strong, I don't know what you can call it, clairvoyance, telepathy,
Yes.
that they are seers, that they tap into the collective consciousness somehow.
Yes, well, that is the one of the potential explanations that these children have some telepathic abilities. They go into the past and zoom in on one particular individual and get the information from them.
Yeah, but it doesn't explain scars and birthmarks, you know, and
Yeah, well,
and the post-traumatic stress.
that is a problem with that. With that interpretation, that the birthmarks, how do they get the birthmark that fit the wounds from which they apparently died?
Yeah.
So there are complications.
Yeah.
All of our files are free and will remain free. If you like the show, you can show support by donating $1 to help with expenses. Just use the PayPal link on our website, YouTube channel, or Facebook page. Thanks.
You know about this super Sai explanation? I mean, I think it's really ridiculous, just like Alex in Skeptical. But it is like super Sai is the explanation they use to cling to materialism as an explanation. Like these children just have some kind of weird Sai explanation, ability.
The Sai explanation has been around for a long time, and it is it may be a good explanation for some of the cases, but I see some difficulties with others.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
What about yourself? Are you convinced about reincarnation?
Well, I find that there is good evidence for it, really very good evidence for it, and that it is difficult to interpret these cases without taking into the interpretation the reincarnation theory.
But your work seems to be driven by an early spiritual transformative experience.
Yes.
So how do you balance or come to understand the relationship between science and spirituality? Because you're working in the middle of these two fields.
Well, what do you mean by science here? For me, science is using the scientific method to solve some problem or to investigate some problem.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think in the study of these cases, we have used scientific method. We have used really the same methods as are used in legal cases, where there's a thorough investigation of a case. And so we, and that is scientific, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, good point. How has academia met this kind of work? Do you feel that there is an openness to this kind of work, or are you just meeting challenges and closed doors?
Well, I think most academics, they are not aware of this. They know nothing about this. But there's some who do. Well, they look at that with critical eyes, and they think that there must be some faults in the investigation, and so on and so forth. But but I think Stevenson has been investigating it. Bruce Grayson, his successor, has been investigating this, and I have been investigating it. And then there is one Jürgen Kyle in the south of in Tasmania. He has also investigated cases. But Jürgen Kyle, he is the only one who sort of takes the telepathic interpretation seriously, or thinks that it's a possibility. So those who have been investigating these cases, they do not all agree fully on the causes of the cases.
You mean the explanations, the interpretations?
Yes, on the interpretations.
Do you get, are these studies in reincarnation that you and others do, are they being peer-reviewed and taken seriously?
Sorry, are they taken seriously?
Yeah, in academia by scholars.
Well, most will not know anything about them. Some will know something about them, and some will have pre-set ideas what is possible and what is not. And so they will reject these cases as they think this just isn't possible.
Yeah, bias.
Well, others will be more open and say, first you must look at the data and see what is in them, and then we must find an interpretation.
Yeah, good point. Do you know if there's been any investigation by anyone into what's it called again? Regression? You know, when people are...
Yes.
Yeah?
Well, there have been many cases attempt, but Stevenson, I haven't done any of that.
No.
But Stevenson, he tried that, and his impression was, or conclusion was, that this would just confuse the child and didn't bring anything new that was really verifiable.
Yes, but okay, that makes sense. But I mean, but I didn't think of that. That's interesting. What I thought of now was, if, let's say, I go to a regression therapist and he takes me back to a former life. There's a million stories like that. Ordinary people who say they have experienced something that looks like a former life. Has no one tried to investigate this and see if there is anything to learn from this?
Well, I cannot tell you if no one has done it. I think some have done it. But I think some things have come out of it, but it has not proven to be a fertile field to investigate.
No, probably hard to verify.
Yes.
Because I have heard anecdotes from people I've met, and many of them, you know, they have made discoveries that has verified. But it will always only be anecdotes. Yeah. It's very hard, I guess, to make it that scientific, you know.
Yes.
Especially if you don't put a lot of resources into investigating, traveling, and I mean, nobody... is anyone sponsoring this kind of study? Did you get grants from university?
Well, first I got a grant really from Stevenson, from the University of Virginia. And then later I started to work with the Institute für Grenzgebiete der Psychologie in Freiburg. But I was still continuing about this, so they funded some of my studies to Sri Lanka and Lebanon. And then when I came to Iceland, we at the university, we tend to get some funding, and we are free to use it as we like. It is not tied to a specific project. And I used some of that funds to do that. I also got some funding from the Bial Foundation in Portugal. I think it was for the psychological studies. So yes, I have had funding from different sources, but it started really with Stevenson.
Is there anyone in the field who can continue this important work that you and Stevenson have? Some younger scientists out there who is taking up the tradition?
Yes, he has a successor at the University of Virginia, and that is Jim Tucker. Dr. Jim Tucker. He has been investigating cases, I think, particularly in Asia, but also emphasized more to find cases in the U.S. Stevenson was always a bit sort of shy about his research into children who remember past life. But Jim Tucker, he has been willing to discuss his research with newspapers and radio and so on. And in that way, he has come to learn about interesting cases in the U.S. And he is now quite an active researcher in this field.
I would expect California maybe to, I mean, that's the new age capital of the world, so they will be open for this.
well, I think...
in California.
Well, yes, maybe, but I am not aware of any particular cases coming from California, but I am not so well informed about this new American case, I must say.
No, that's okay.
There are also cases found in Brazil, in South America. There was one scholar, Hermani Andrade. He studied, found and investigated quite a few cases in Brazil, but he passed away quite some time back.
Okay, did he publish his work?
Yes, he published his work, and Stevenson also referred to it. Yes.
But you have had a long-standing interest in reincarnation and also mediumship and other parapsychology. How would you compare or contrast the study of these phenomena with other parapsychological research? Do you see relationship patterns here too?
Well...
Is it possible to draw any conclusions from this research into the different fields?
Well, of course, there was the famous experiment of J.B. Rhine, where he was studying extrasensory perception. But that is a bit different. And then, we have all the study of mediumship, where a medium brought some information that she couldn't know about, but was apparently from a deceased person. So, well, it is, well, I don't know.
No.
I don't know how to answer you fully.
No, that's okay. About the children that you've studied, have you ever heard stories, either your own cases or other cases, where they have spoken about other times, like in where this isn't modern time?
No, I don't think so. They generally speak about a time, or seems to be referring about a time that is rather recent. And I do not remember any, from these children, any cases that seems to indicate a long, distant past. But when you speak to people, just ordinary people like you and me, then Then some of them come up that they have some memory from a long...
Yeah, they were Cleopatra or Napoleon.
Yes, from a long distant past.
Yeah.
But there is also one interesting thing, that among these children, no one that I know about or that I've studied has claimed to have been any important person. These were all common people, just sort of the ordinary kind of people. They were not important, not...
Just unknown people, anonymous.
Yes.
Interesting. That's a strength, I think. That's a strength to their stories. But what about, have you ever heard of any case where they speak of other worlds, like other planets or something weird, some
life on other planets?
Yeah, for example, I mean, something that can be interpreted as not the Earth?
I do not recall that.
No.
No, I don't think so.
Because, the reincarnation hypothesis there's many versions. I mean, you have some who think that you can reincarnate not just forward, but also backwards in time.
Yes.
You have some that thinks you can reincarnate on different planets.
Yeah.
You have some that think we can reincarnate as other creatures, like animals.
Yes.
And of course, one interesting problem maybe is that how many people are we on the Earth now? 7 billion?
Something like that.
Yeah. And then some will say, okay, but where did all these people come from if everybody reincarnates?
Yes. Well, that is a personal problem. But there has been one scholar who found a solution to that. He thought that when population was smaller, then there was a long time between reincarnation. But nowadays, when they have become, the population has grown, it means that people are reincarnating very quickly.
Yeah.
But how it is, of course, I can't know. And that's an important criticism, really, of these of reincarnation.
Yeah, and there's also those who claim that today everybody is on Earth who has ever lived in the past are now present at the same time. That could explain why we are so many, if we take everyone who ever lived on Earth.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yes, maybe, yes.
And there's also an interesting philosophical explanation, and that is that there are two ways to reincarnate. One is that we are being split. We accumulate lots of experience, and then we split into different, like if I reincarnate, I may become two different persons.
Yes.
And many explain the soulmate as this. And then there is those who say that we can also do the opposite. We can reincarnate with different persons in one as a new person. I mean, this is philosophy. This isn't science. But do you have any thoughts about this?
Well, this is too far-fetched for me.
Okay. Right, but
we haven't have any evidence for it.
No, and we can't find evidence for this, of course. It's beyond that. But we talk about far-fetched. You did write a book about the Indian sage Satya Sai Baba.
Yes, I did.
Before his death. But there are many videos and investigations suggesting that at least some of his miracles have been staged or faked. What do you make of this?
Well, he was a complicated problem, Satya Sai Baba.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, he may have... you have to look at this youth and this whole history, because when people were very close to him, they observed him do so remarkable things that they were all puzzled about. And then many of his phenomena, they happened at a distance. For example, he was very fond of producing what they called the vibhuti, this holy ash, and he would give it to people. Then some people, they hung up photographs of him. Then after a while, they would come specks of vibhuti on the photographs. And they explained that came from Sai Baba. And they didn't know that anyone had these photographs. So these were interpreted as distant phenomena of Sai Baba. But he was a very puzzling person, Sai Baba.
Yeah.
And he would when he was young, he would they would often go down to the riverbed nearby, near Puttaparthi. And he might, for example, with his hand shovel the sand till it was like a heap of sand. And then he would put his hand into it and come out with the hand, and there was a fresh pancake on it, and it didn't have a grain of sand on it. And he would then give this to people. So there are many very puzzling, and that is the reason why people started to gather around them. They found there were so many miraculous events around them that they gathered great crowds around him. And they worshipped him and so on. So he was, of course, he is most famous for giving away objects, producing, some say, objects that he would give away.
Yeah.
I remember, and sometimes these objects came around because of something he was talking about, or people were talking about. I remember once with him, I was with Kallisosis then, and we were trying to convince him to participate in some experiments. But he sort of didn't give a real answer, and he never did in the end. But so we were arguing that it was so important for science to know more about this phenomena.
Yeah.
Yes. And so we were pressing the approach of science. But he would then respond, I'm pressing the aspect of morality and religion and so on. And then he said to me that daily life and spiritual life should be interwoven like a double rudraksha. And I didn't know what a rudraksha was, and still less what was a double rudraksha.
Okay.
Yeah. So I asked him, what is a rudraksha? And he tried to explain, and our interpreter tried to explain, but we were not happy. I was not happy with their explanation, but was very insistent to get to know that. Then he seemed to lose patience, moved his hand in a particular way when he is creating an object, and then he showed me in his hand a rudraksha, a double rudraksha. And and then he said, then he gave it to me to see, and I examined it. I gave it to the interpreter. He also examined it. And then for some reason, our interpreter gave it to Sai Baba. Then he shook his hand once more. Then he opened his palm and said, this is a gift for you. There was the double rudraksha, but with a golden shield above and below it, and a little cross, and in that cross was a ruby, it seemed. Wow. And it was later proven to be a ruby. So, well, he seemed to be able to change this, and so many of these phenomena around it, they came about because of the discussion of what you're talking about. like I couldn't understand what a double reduction was. And then in the end he produced it. Well, you may say that he was a great actor and he had planned this all along, but it didn't look like that to me.
Yeah, but we know, similar charges has been made against people like Uri Geller, who on one hand, he has passed laboratory scrutiny for his abilities, but on the other hand, he has also used stage magic. Yeah. And we see the same in Osho. Osho seems to be, some think he has some real gift, but he is also engaging in deception. So, I mean, what are we to make of this? Could we here talk about people who actually do both, that they both have abilities, but that they also engage in tricks for some reason?
Well, I think that may be the case, that there are some who do both. Maybe there are some, they want to make something genuine, and when it doesn't turn up, they do it the tricky way.
But isn't this a problem for scientific research? I mean, what do you do? What do you scientists and researchers do to manage this process? Do you have any way to
if the man is willing to be examined, and then they can be sure that there is no tricks involved, or pretty sure. But the problem with Sai Baba was that we never got we never got him involved in any laboratory research or critical examination.
Yeah.
So he remained sort of unsolved, but there was such a wealth of observations that people made, and over a long period of time, and that you cannot just write it off, all of it as tricks. In my view, that would be rather superficial. And I think that is mostly done by people who never really studied him and various aspects of the phenomena that, and also talk to people who were with him when he was young, and so.
Yeah, but people can be, especially disciples, can be very impressionative. They can be impressed very easily, maybe. I mean, I haven't studied him, but I imagine that there's a certain goodwill. Just like the skeptics are so hostile that they just refuse everything immediately. But the opposite is also true, that you can be so open or so...
Yeah, we can be deceived, of course.
Deceived, yeah.
Yeah, but
you have studied parapsychology for a long time. You studied, like we said, reincarnation. You studied some of these spiritual people. What does your scientific work, taught you about spirituality? Do you have any insights at the end of the interview here that you can share with people about spirituality?
Well, you were talking about paranormal phenomena, and now you're talking about spirituality.
Okay, you can start with distinguishing it.
Well, I think the paranormal phenomena, they may not have anything to do with spirituality. I think spirituality is more an general approach to life, and we think of spiritual people who are very benevolent and about the saints and so on. But some of these saints, they also have had some remarkable paranormal abilities. Like, I'm thinking about just a moment, about the flying monk, who, now I cannot remember his name. He levitated quite often, and especially when he was in a religious situation, when he was in a church once he was brought to the Pope, and then he levitated quite high. And so,
wow.
Yeah, that is common. And then, of course, in mediumship, you also have very gross physical phenomena.
Yeah.
Like in the case of Erlendur, I wrote a book about him, the Icelandic physical medium.
Mm-hmm.
He would often, at sittings, he would levitate, and people would see him levitate, and they had to sort of to hold him down. And
Wow.
with him, there was also a lot of light phenomena. They had their shares in darkness, but in the darkness, they would come like star-like lights with different colors, sometimes more, sometimes less, and sometimes even a pillar of light. And in that pillar of light, a person would appear, and he would be able to talk and communicate with the sitters. And there was one case that became very famous about this pillar of light. At one time, this pillar of light appeared, and a man appeared in it.
Huh.
And then he disappeared again, and then he said he had been to Copenhagen.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and there was a fire in Copenhagen. And at that time, there was no radio, no telephone to Iceland, from Iceland to abroad. So those who were present, they wrote this down, that he had been stating there was a fire in Copenhagen.
Uh-huh.
And then they waited for the next ship to arrive from Copenhagen with Politiken. And then they saw in a prominent place in Politiken,
Mm-hmm.
there had been a fire in Store Kongensgade.
Mm.
I think he had also mentioned the name Store Kongensgade. And many other things that he had said about the fire were correct.
Mm.
And then, by the way, then this man disappeared. And then he came again in the pillar of light, maybe an hour or two later. And then he told them that the fire in Copenhagen was under control. And when these researchers then read the account of the fire in Copenhagen, it was in a factory on Store Kongensgade.
Mm.
It proved right that the fire had come, and it had been almost put out, but then it came up again, and then it was put out finally. And this was a description of something happening in a very distant place.
Mm.
Even it's quite a distance from Iceland to Denmark.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. And this reminds one of the case of Swedenborg, the Swedish Swedenborg.
Yes, Emanuel Swedenborg. Yes.
Emanuel Swedenborg.
Yeah.
He once arrived from England on a ship to Gothenburg, Göteborg.
Mm.
And then he said to his friends that there was a fire in Stockholm, and he described it, and he seemed to be concerned if it would reach his house. But according to him, it didn't. And then I think about 2 days later or something, there came a messenger on a horse from Stockholm and to the governor in Gothenburg, and then it was verified that there had indeed been a fire in Stockholm.
Right.
Yeah, and in fact, this fire had not reached the home of Swedenborg. So this fire in Copenhagen and fire in Stockholm by Swedenborg, one by Swedenborg, the other by Erlendur, is very similar.
Yeah.
And I wrote one paper about these two cases. Yeah.
Okay.
So very remarkable cases indeed.
So, so paranormal phenomenons are not necessarily spiritual and may not necessarily have anything to do with spirituality. But for people who are spiritual seekers, is there anything we can learn from all your research into these paranormal fields? Is there any conclusions?
When you mention that these phenomena happen to spiritual people, we must also think about it, that in the life of Jesus, there were many miracles, very remarkable miracles.
And Buddha.
Yes. And Pythagoras and so on.
Yes.
Yes, and I tend to think that if there had been no miracles in the life of Jesus, that Christianity may never have come around.
Mm.
It was through his miracles that the religion really took off and became a world religion.
So maybe spiritual adepts need sometimes to use a little paranormal phenomenon in order to get people to open up to their message.
Yes, I think so. I think that it seems that Jesus did that anyway.
Yeah.
And I think also even our Sai Baba, he did it in a way. He loved to surprise people and make them just flabbergasted with surprise.
Right.
And yes, but I'm sure there'll be more of that kind.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we're almost done here.
Yeah.
So last question for you is a personal question, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So have you had any encounters or any paranormal experience yourself?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
You want to share it?
Let me first think about it.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I will tell you one thing.
Okay.
When I was a student in Copenhagen in the I think it was in the 1950s.
Uh-huh.
There I rented a room from two ladies. They used a flat there as they were sewing and repairing clothes.
Hmm.
There was a kitchen also there. And then about 6 o'clock they would go, and I never saw them in the evening or weekends. But then one night I heard there was someone in the kitchen doing something. So I thought, well, the ladies must have come now.
Hmm.
So I opened, and then no light, and then this noise became dead silent.
Hmm.
Well, so I was a bit surprised. Well, then a little later, I was reading something or doing something, but then a little later, I noticed again. So again, I opened the door very carefully, and as I opened it, everything became dead silent. There was no light. Yeah.
Spooky.
And then the third thing was the most surprising.
Uh-huh.
Then a bit later, I went to bed, and I slept on a sofa. And on the table that I had at the sofa, I had the light I used for my bicycle. And when I had just fallen asleep, I was suddenly blinded by a light.
Oh.
And then the light from my bicycle had suddenly lit, and it lit and was directed to my eyes.
Wow.
That was an odd coincidence. This had happened before, and I had this light for several months, I think, and it was always in perfect order. So why did I hear this noise in the kitchen twice? Why was this light lit and directly into my eyes? So this is one.
Did you tell the women about this?
Did I tell the women? No, I'm afraid I never told them.
Because maybe they could tell you something about the place, you know. So
yes, they could. It could be that some people must have lived it before.
Yeah.
Yes, I regret I didn't ask them about it.
Maybe they would tell you it's the house ghost.
Yes, maybe they had also been aware of something.
Right. Well, you became a better investigator later in life, so that's okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Thanks you very much for your patience and for your open sharing with us. I recommend your book to everyone, and it's not just that it's important that people buy these books so we can get more funding for this kind of work, but also it's very interesting to see these stories. It's very entertaining. You don't have to be a scientist to read your book, right? It's for everyone, right?
These books are written in an easy way. I do not write any complicated English because I'm not an English natural speaker.
Oh, so you write the book directly in English, not in Iceland, and then they translate it?
Well, I saw a light and came here. That I wrote in English.
Okay.
And it has never been published in Icelandic. But the past among the living, I first wrote that in Icelandic, then in English. And then the book about Sai Baba, I wrote in English. It doesn't exist in Icelandic. And also the book about the interest on the physical medium, that I wrote in English, and it has not been translated.
Yeah, I have to say you have made incredibly many journal articles, incredibly many, alone and together with renowned scientists all over the world. I will link that page for our audience so they can go. Some of them are out with full text so they can read them.
Yes, you can put in, you can reveal everything on my...
Yeah.
Yes, and also tell them about my homepage, or give the link to my homepage where they can read the many original articles.
Mm. And the fields you are covering are all sorts of parapsychology?
Sorry?
Subjects you cover are all forms of parapsychology?
Well, I would say I rather like the word psychical research.
Mm.
Yes, but it deals with with paranormal phenomena, with unexplained matters, and with some things that are odds with materialistic science.
Yeah. I would say you have some philosophical and spiritual works too, it seems, you have made.
Yes. What do you think about? What do you have in mind?
Well, human stupidity, for instance.
I mentioned what?
Huh?
What did you say? I mentioned...
Den menneskelige dumhet, human stupidity.
Yeah. Okay.
No, but I'm just reading the list of your publications, your articles.
Then, of course, my book on Sai Baba has appeared in some 20 editions. The book that I wrote, The Color Sources at the Hour of Death, that has also appeared in some 20 editions. The Past Among the Living is in Icelandic, English, and Italian. But the interesting book, and I saw a light and came here, that still exists only in English.
Mm. Okay, that's great. So we will link everything, and people can get it easily from Amazon or wherever. So that's great.
Yeah.
So and one more thing, this is going out on 2 different podcasts. It's going out on my own podcast, and it's going out to another podcast called Skeptical.
Yes,
and
I love that.
They have interviewed you before, actually.
Oh, I think so, man. They are in America.
Yes.
Yes. You are in Norway.
Yes, correct.
Yes.
So thanks a lot, Erlend, for coming on the show and educating us about this incredibly interesting matter.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Al. It was great to talk to you.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that.
Likewise.
It's
So-
also interesting for me to review these things.
Pardon?
It's also interesting for me to review
Yeah.
some of these things on my work.
Yeah.
By the way, I think there was very good questions and it was balanced from your point. So I much appreciate Al.
Okay, great.
Okay, Al, very fine to talk to you.
Yeah, likewise. Have a great evening.
Same to you. Bye-bye.
Bye. And that's our show. Thank you for listening to Forum Borealis. Before I leave you, I will read you an excellent excerpt regarding this matter. But first, let me invite you to support us if you enjoy our shows. How can you support us? Well, the simplest is to subscribe to our YouTube channels, both the main channel and the Shorts channel. That's a tremendous help. And remember to click the bell so you get notified when we have a new release. They are already, as it is, few and far between, and it doesn't help that YouTube is censoring independent media in order to boost the mainstream platforms that has now flooded the tube. Now, if you want to go further, of course you can spread our shows. If there's someone you know who you suspect will enjoy a particular program we made, send them that. Recommend that they check it out. The best way to get someone on board is for them to discover and experience it themselves. And if you're hooked, you can subscribe to our website. If you donate $1 or more, we give you access. And there will always be a minimum of 5 unreleased shows, plus the extras. At this moment, it's twice that. But don't let money be an obstacle. I mean, of course, every contribution counts and will facilitate us producing more, faster, better. But only chip in what you can afford. We wouldn't want you to part with your hard-earned money leading to suffering. Also, we appreciate all the communications we receive, but we reached the threshold. We just can't cope with all the inquiries. So, and I'm not even reading mails. Bella is taking care of that. So you can't reach me that way. If you become a website subscriber, I am partaking in the forum we have there for our subs. So that's the best way to reach me if you are so inclined. Now, we're going to follow up this topic in future programs, so stay tuned for that. Finally, now let me read you an old poem before parting. I spent 1,000,000 years in the world of minerals, as a rock, as a cliff. Then I died to the inorganic state, became endowed with growth, as a flower, as a tree, forgetting my former existence because of its otherness. Then I attained to the animal, oblivious of my life as a plant, except for inclinations in the season of spring and sweet herbs, like the inclination of infants towards their mother's bosom. Then I died from animality, and I was human. My mind ripened, awakening from greed and self-seeking to become wise and knowing. I behold 100,000 intelligences, most marvelous, and remember my former states and inclinations. At the next remove I shall die to man, that I may soar and lift up my head amongst the angels blessed. But even from angelhood I must pass on. So when I die again, I will rise past the stars, escape even their heavenly state, for everything is perishing except his face. Yet once more I shall be sacrificed, to become that which you cannot imagine. Oh, let me not exist, and when I cease, the void saith to me, proclaimed in tones loud as an organ, verily unto the source shall you return. Now, why then should I fear? When have I become less? And what have I ever lost by dying? Said Mevlana Rumi, which concludes this episode today. Your host has been Al. Thanks to my team and your generous support. Until next time we cross paths, I remain yours sincerely. Be seeing you.
Who is number one?